Hey everybody, today is going to be a very interesting video because what we're going to talk about is why loss of control in flight exists, why there's a massive gap in your capabilities built into the training system itself, even though the training system, the villain in our conversations here today, doesn't know it. It exists, and I'm going to demonstrate that to you today because there's a very powerful way to look at it. So remember, as a pilot, are you prepared to deal with an unexpected airplane upset event on its way to a fatal loss of control in flight accident? That's always the underlying question in the series. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get right to it. What I'd like to do here pretty quickly is I'd like to jump into the slides and where we left off on this particular topic later. So let's go ahead and have a look at this graphic. What this is, it shows the statistics in a 10-year period from different areas of aviation. What I want to bring your attention to is how the far left column, the top column, is the dominance of loss of control in flight, and it is established, those big columns, because of the existing training system. It virtually ensures that every pilot is not in control. And what those arrows represent is how we can drive down that risk through effective academic training, the first arrow. The next one is now advanced simulator training, and the final one is on aircraft training. And that's not an exaggeration how far down it goes. It's been third-party measured with a transformational, every pilot in control, solution standard compliant program. So what we want to do with an effective program is to drive it down to take you from an intolerable risk to an acceptable risk, to essentially take this number one threat to air safety you face on every single flight and render it no more threatening than any other risk that you have. Because remember, loss of control in flight typically represents nearly 50% of all fatal accidents in any category of fixed-wing aviation. That's important to remember. It's in there because of the training system itself. The training system perpetuates this. So let's talk about and understand, because as we go from red to green, there's a transformation that happens. But the first part for you to seek out this training in the red, and you don't even know you're in the red, is that you need to understand how it's even possible. Because the big question that we have when we say we can make this big change is, how is that even possible? I mean, I'm ready for anything, aren't I? I've had my type rating, I'm doing my recurrent training, I do self-study, I seek out other training programs. Well, the reason why it exists is because the training system by design completely misses it. So a great way to understand this is this licensing training deficiencies concept model. And this is just one dimension of effective upset prevention and recovery training, but also one dimension, one way of showing you very obviously and in a shocking way how big the gap is in the training system, which just kind of floats by us all. So what this particular graphic represents is 90 degrees nose up in a flight attitude, 90 degrees nose down, and the airplane banking all the way to the right or left. It essentially represents the entire all attitude of envelope of the airplane, all 180 degrees of pitch, all 180 degrees of roll. And so this, in any fixed-wing airplane, in any flight, you can end up anywhere on this diagram, okay? And we're going to discuss that a little bit. So the definition of the airplane upset, 25 degrees nose up, 10 degrees nose down, and 45 degrees of bank, represents only 4.9% of the all-attitude envelope, okay? You might look at that and say, okay, well, that's where I spend most of my time. Well, that's the point. In fact, if you think about how much time you spend in that green block, it's probably 99% plus of your time. Unless you're an aerobatic pilot or a military test pilot or a fighter pilot, you're in there all the time, okay? And so if we end up outside of that box, unexpectedly or unintentionally, that's the definition of the airplane upset. So you need to know these parameters. If you find yourself unexpectedly more than 25 degrees nose up, 10 degrees nose down, or 45 degrees of bank, it really is a situation where whatever you were doing before doesn't matter. You need to get it back into the heart of the green envelope and get the airplane stabilized. Now, here's some good news. The good news is that our licensing training goes all the way out to 11% of the all-attitude envelope, but it stops there. So you're looking at 30 degrees nose up, 30 degrees nose down, and 60 degrees of bank. It's important to realize, and this is the shocking part, that 90%, 88.9% of the all-attitude environment is not addressed in licensing training. Now, that should get your attention because that's where the precursor airplane upset event is on its way to the fatal loss of control in flight accident. This goes directly to the question of the series. And the worst part about it, and why the training system is the villain, is because the skills that you learn in the green and in the orange areas do not reliably transfer to the red. And in fact, what you need to do in the red area is counterintuitive. But it gets worse than that. Let's talk about it a little bit. But before we do, how could you possibly end out into the red area? So here's the thing. Let's talk about a wake encounter. Remember, there's 20 plus hazards associated with a risk of loss of control in flight in an airplane upset event, which means I'm talking about one, a wake encounter. There's over 20 hazards you can get exposed to, for example, like a thunderstorm or distraction or complacency that could allow you to get out here. But it's been demonstrated that airplanes, depending on their size, and the wake generating airplane, let's assume it's like a 757 or an A380, you can have an airplane roll at up to 80 to 200 degrees per second, depending on its size and the conditions. Think about that. 80 degrees per second to 200 degrees per second. So if the typical response time of a human being is 2 seconds, you're way outside of your maximum 45, especially 60 degrees of bank, very easily. The airplane gets flipped over in wake encounter, and when it gets flipped over, because now gravity and lift are in the same direction, it starts diving down very quickly. So in this case, in just literally a matter of a couple seconds, which everybody can be exposed to operating around, especially big airports and big airplanes, you can end up where the tip of that white arrow is at, looks like about 110 degrees of bank. It looks like, 40 to 50 degrees nose low. And that is a very startling situation. But here's the thing, is that it requires atypical skills and experience. And why? Well, the biggest thing about this is that the correct actions are counterintuitive, okay? And applying that counterintuitive correct action is critical because these are time critical and usually life-threatening. Whether you're at high altitude, now you're risking force compressibility and controllability issues at high altitude, or anywhere near the ground, you are losing altitude fast. You're on your way towards the ground. Okay, the other part of it is that the cueing is very unfamiliar. What you're seeing visually, what you're feeling physically, what you're hearing audibly is very, very confusing, because the ultimate issue is that this is an incapacitating altered mental state. You're psychophysiologically incapacitated to take action unless you've had dedicated overlearning to be able to deal with this situation. You need to have training that you've been in this situation, been there, seen that, contained the startle factor. Here's what I'm going to do to mitigate it. And the good news is, in an effective upset prevention and recovery training program, as you escalate into and out of the red area, building this experience, this measure of comfort with these all-attitude conditions, is the most important part of that process. Is while you develop the ability to recover from any airplane upset event, the mental modeling of escalating and de-escalating builds an incredible capability to recognize, be aware of, and prevent these from developing at all, keeping you in the green. So think about that. The very best recovery is not needing it, is not being there in the first place, okay? The very best prevention is not needing the remedy. Does that make sense? Okay? So that's the key to effective upset prevention and recovery training, is making sure that you now have the ability to deal with all 100% of the envelope. Should you get there, you know exactly what to do to mitigate it. But most importantly, you never get there in the first place. So it implies, and it does, just like we saw with the Delta Airlines study that showed a 50% reduction in exposure to precursor upset events with powerful UPRT program that they have with APS, is that they don't even get to the airplane upset because of their increased ability in all aspects of their flight operation. Improved flight envelope awareness, improved aeronautical decision-making, improved manual flight operation proficiency, manual handling, resilience in crisis, any crisis, just not an airplane upset event. So this is really exciting, and we're going to end here on this particular topic because I want you to walk away from this conversation with one main thing, is that the massive gap allowing loss of control in flight to dominate aviation safety as the number one threat to air safety is because of a perpetuated gap in the training system itself. There is really no way that the training system, based on its current design, can measurably diminish that threat. because of the fact that by design it allows it to exist. Okay? So think about that as you move forward. That green area, the boundaries, are the definition of the airplane upset event. And what you want to make sure you do is stay in there at all times. But should you find yourself outside of that in any measure or in a significant measure, is you know exactly what to do. You have the strategy built into your brain. You've been there, seen that, you know exactly what to do. I look forward to seeing you on the next video because this is just so transformational. This diagram, more than anything else, is what converts people to realize that, to their disbelief, the training system is perpetuating this threat, and I need to take action to be the best that I can be as a pilot.